Hi, everyone. The microphone is just for the purpose of the people that are listening online. So it has a use, but thank you for coming. So we're gonna start. Thanks to Emerson Dorsch for receiving us and Karen Rifas that it's somewhere. Karen. I wanted to introduce Yvette, who is the director. Come. You need to talk to the microphone.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Emerson Dorsch. It's lovely to have everybody here, and I think this is going to be a really great conversation. I also want to thank Karen Rifas, the artist that's currently exhibiting, and someone who's been a fellow leader in the community. I hope you guys enjoy the talk.
Thank you, and thank you for having us. We've been talking about this for like months now. So you'll see more going on at Emerson Dorsch. We'll talk more about important topics that that you know we've seen in our practice, things that need to be taken care of, that also the experts know. So with not further ado, let's start the talk. Okay, awesome. I'm going to introduce our speakers today. My name is Nuria Richards. I am the VP of Finance at our table, and I am the founder of Richards & Co., which is a company that helps collectors get organized in the planning side of their estate for art. I want to introduce Maria Pia Leon Angell. She's the Director of Client Relations at Forbes Family Trust. Melissa Passman. She is Senior Associate at David Pitney, LLC. And Marilena Angulo. She's many of you know her already. She's a collector and lawyer based in Miami, between Miami and London. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, talk a little bit about what they do in their practice as professionals and how their practice intersects with our collecting and our organizations. So who wants to start?
Hi, and apologies for the voice. So I'm Elena Angulo. Can you understand me? Okay. I'm a corporate finance lawyer. I've been practicing for 25 years. I lived in London and New York. I moved to Miami 9 years ago. My husband and I collect contemporary art. We focus on works on paper. We have been collecting together since we got married 15 years ago. And before that, I used to collect by myself. When we moved to Miami, we wanted to support the local art scene. So we started visiting galleries and met Brooke and his lovely wife. And we've been coming to Emerson Dorsch since we moved here 9 years ago. And we try to support local organizations through participation in the board or general support. So,
hi, I'm Melissa Passman. I'm a lawyer. I'm based in I'm based in New York, and yeah, I'm very glad to be in Miami. I always love coming here. My background is actually in the art world. So I worked at a gallery for a long time before law school, and being in a gallery really motivated me to think about how to apply what I was seeing every day, into a legal practice. So I went to law school with the idea of doing art through the lens of tax and estate planning, and that is what I am doing now. So I work with a lot of different people in the art world. So I work with galleries on all kinds of issues, related to sales and use tax or international tax issues. I work with collectors on charitable planning, giving to museums, negotiating those agreements, doing estate planning for them, which is a bulk of the work. And a lot of that work, really involves understanding, what the art specific aspects are. And, I really love working with people, in that way, and we can have that shared passion. I work with nonprofits as well, including a few private museums. And I also work with artists and artists' estates. And so, yeah, I really got everyone covered there and advisors. So, yeah, all aspects of tax and estate planning, and also thinking about the legacy planning component.
You want to share this one? So Elena has her own. You can have your own microphone now.
Sorry, okay.
No, it's okay. Now,
Yeah.
sorry.
Hi, my name is Pia. I'm part of Forbes Family Trust. Forbes Family Trust is a family office, a multifamily office. It's the largest independent advisor in the world by now. We manage about $30 billion. My background is in economics. I work in banking for some time, and from that part of my life, I learned a couple of things. One, how the sausage is being made. So I know exactly, how the products are made and everything. So that it helps me a lot now in the role I have. I also had the opportunity to live in several countries, and that gave me a lot, because I think that being forced to live in different cultures it's what makes you stronger and a better human being. And definitely I learned not to be on the corporate ladder, not to be part of the corporate world. So actually that type of work that I have, it's not corporate in the sense that everybody understands it. After working in banking, I had a 3-year hiatus because of some issues in my family that I had to take care of. And after that, I decided to join the family office realm, because it got better with my personality. And working on that, I realized that you don't need to study just economics and finance. You need to study psychology to work with families. So after economics and politics, I did a graduate degree in systemic family therapy. And that is, so families are systems. And even though my company, it's based doing, that's investments, of course, we have a whole team doing that. I'm more into the day-to-day with the families and understanding the dynamics that the family has inside. So, and how it relates to this, it relates because art, it's part of wealth and it's part of a passion. So you have to understand the family behind it. So we will talk about that later.
I'm going to talk a little louder. Sorry, but there's some people that said that they're not hearing, so I'm going to exaggerate my tone. Preparing for this talk, we discussed the importance of legacy from all the points of view that we have here. And I think that would be a good way to get into topic. The importance, why do we need professionals? And Mariana, you're being a lawyer, and a collector, the importance of like having everything in place. From the side of Melissa, we talk a lot about appraisals and why everything needs to be cataloged, like in the present for any need, not just in the case of emergency in the last minute when something happens. And with you, Pia, we have talked about the importance of education, the family legacy education, and what is left behind once these mega wealthy families leave something behind. So I would like to, if anyone wants to discuss, like, why is this important? Like, give an introduction from your personal perspective. Why what we do is important, why it needs to be arranged, why it needs to be legally protected.
Well, I can start talking about
Loud, very
about
loud.
my personal experience. So I don't have children. So I started thinking, what am I going to do with my collection in the future? By now, we have quite a lot. We have probably like 500 pieces of art. Obviously, not all of them are things that museums will be interested in. So, so then I was like, what are we going to do with all of this? I don't want to have my niece or my cousin or whoever is managing my state have to deal with all this. Because first of all, you may have a family member who will be helping after you're not around, but they don't know anything about art. So, so then I started figuring out first, I need to catalog everything, figure out what I have, then figure out what can I give to family people alive, now, what am I happy giving away? Because it's very hard to give away anything. And then also, what can I possibly donate to museums? And then we donated some things to museums. That's a different process we'll talk about later, but that's not that straightforward either, because museums don't want everything you have. They have storage issues, they have conservation issues. So it's not like you can say, oh, I'm going to donate my Karen Briefas to the MoMA. It doesn't work that way. Then the next thing was, okay, we need to put together a will. And as she will tell you, most people do their will and put things in trust. But we decided I didn't want to have a trust. Hopefully she'll tell me that's not true, but I was told every piece of art has to be moved into the trust, and it's a lot of work. I was like, you know what? Whoever gets my stuff, they should be happy they're getting something. So I'm going to make this easier for me, but that's not necessarily the path anyone should follow, especially if you have children or someone that you really want to get the art. It's obviously, from a state planning perspective, better for them if you arrange your will in a certain manner. So I'll let you.
Sure. Thank you very much, Marie. Yeah, from the legal perspective, I think, just to echo what you said, the most important thing you can do is just think about things in advance. And I think having the conversation, among family members or anybody else about what you would like to happen with your work is really key. I think a lot of collectors, of course, are very attached to everything they've collected. Everything has a story. It represents, a part of their life. But, if there are kids or, nieces and nephews or anybody else, then that way, there's not necessarily that same interest on the other side. And, when you do have people who don't understand what to do with the artwork, then you may find that the work goes into places where you had absolutely no intention, or it gets sold, or it just is not what you were planning at all. So, as far as kind of the basic estate planning structures, I guess there's kind of two levels of estate planning too, I would say, because you have taxable estates and non-taxable estates. So in Florida, there's no state estate tax, but there are other reasons why you might want to use a trust. And in other states like New York, there is a state estate tax. And then I guess for everybody, there's a federal estate tax where it's a lifetime exemption. Right now, it's very, very high. It's about $12 million per person. It's going to go up to $13 million in 2023 with inflation, and it's scheduled to go back down to around $6 million in 2026 unless something else happens with federal tax legislation. So, that will change the planning as well, and you might be planning to get artwork out of your estate during your lifetime by making lifetime gifts to use your exemption up, or to otherwise make charitable donations. But in any case, the basic estate planning structure, you would have a will. Generally, I think people do have a trust, depending on what their motivations are. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, to avoid probate, number one. Some states have a much easier probate process than others, but in New York and California.
Can you explain us what is a probate
Oh,
process?
sure. And probate. So, when somebody dies, then all their will, or if they didn't have a will, there still has to be a filing with the appropriate court in the state. And at that point, the executor will be appointed. They'll get letters and they'll have the authority to go ahead and act on behalf of the estate in terms of bank accounts, making donations, disposing of property, distributing a property if there's a will, following what the will says, or using their discretion if that's also what the will provides. A will will be public. You won't necessarily find it online, but if you went to the court, you can pull up the will and you can see everything that's in the will. So a reason for using a trust is first to avoid probate, and then also for privacy issues. And I guess those kind of can coalesce too, because with a trust, it's effective right away. The trustee can act. You don't have to wait for the probate process where the letters are issued by the court. That can take months. I'm actually working on an estate right now in New York. The person who died was a trustee at a very large New York institution. He did not use a trust, and there's a lot of artwork. This is a $70 million estate, and there's a lot of artwork in there, and the institutions want to be able to take possession of the artwork, but because the New York surrogates court is so slow right now, there's no letters that have been issued, and the museums cannot take possession until the letters are issued. So you have this gap. And then similarly with a trust, you have a trustee, or you might have co-trustees, and that trustee can, step in right away. If you become incapacitated, the trustee, whoever the backup trustee is will take over. So it's a smoother transition process that way. And of course, the document remains private. So that's kind of the basic elements, of what you might be thinking about in estate planning, in addition to doing incapacity documents too, just to make sure, if you have an agent, who can be your power of attorney, and for healthcare decisions as well. So that's kind of the framework. And I know we'll get into more issues later, but I'll hand it over to Tina.
Yeah, and that's why I hire a lawyer when I have to deal with that and with my clients. There's a lot to say, but legacy, it's a very difficult subject to talk with people, basically because it makes us realize that we are human. It makes us realize that we are mortal and that our end will come at some point. So it's interesting to see what happened during the years of COVID, because my conversation with clients usually are about how much, right today it's how much my portfolio lost last quarter or something like that. But during COVID, the main conversation is the conversation that I like to have with families, that it was like, what will happen when I am not here? Because that's the conversation that we should have very early in our lives. The moment you have certain assets that you have to pass, even if you don't have inheritors at the time, you have to be thinking about it. The earlier, the better. So many people during COVID realized that people in their 40s and 50s, they were dying of COVID. So they were calling me like, I haven't had a trust. I haven't worked on this. I don't know. I don't know which of my kids is going to receive this or what, or please prepare for this. And at the end, it's because COVID forced us to face our own mortality. And I think that that's the good thing of what happened of the pandemic, because legacy, it's much more than a tangible wealth. Legacy tells our story, and you mentioned that. Legacies will give us a storyline of our family, from our grandparents or great-grandparents to our great-great-grandkids. So additionally, legacy is a bond through generations. The families can be united by a collection, for example, of art in this case, So this is a collection of Maria Elena's collection. It's here, and well, she doesn't have kids, but if she had a nephew or whatever, say, well, that's my aunt's, you know, she started this because of this reason, of this passion that she had for these works in paper. So in order to have that legacy in place and do it correctly, you have to find, first of all, your purpose. And I guess that in your case, you have a purpose, Elena, to do this collection, and can talk about afterwards. But the shared purpose, that it's the purpose that is shared by the whole family, it's very important. And it's an internal job that every family should work in. And it's not easy because everybody has their own needs and tastes and beauties on the eye of the beholder. So I can find this beautiful and some people cannot find it beautiful, you know, and it's not, there's no wrong or right. It's just another, you know, way of seeing things. So the success of a family legacy is the success on creating a shared purpose that will be kept during the years. And then I don't know if you want me to talk about purpose, because I think it's very important to
circle to purpose in
Okay.
a second, but I want to consolidate kind of like what the three of you have shared. And there's these conversations that happen with clients where on one hand you have something that has monetary value and has, on the other hand, has, you know, a relationship with yourself and it's so hard to let go. And you're started thinking, what's going to happen to this? And all of you are related to a nonprofit or several nonprofits in some capacity and get involved in a way in which you're part of a board and you make decisions and you are talking with the community on how to get organized to fulfill the needs of a collection. So there's one side that has to do with responsibility over these objects, you know, taking care of conservation, taking care of mobilizing the pieces, knowing where they are, what they are, the sizes. That's a very hard conversation. A lot of my own clients don't have that in order. And when you get to the lawyer, to the board, like, what do you tell them? Like, I have this large, amazing collection of things, but you don't have something good to give them. And then in the other hand, it's a process. You know, you need to, because it's a responsibility, it's a process. We're talking about, in many cases, large amounts of money. Even if the pieces are of a little lower value, it starts accumulating. So there's a legacy, there's a market portion. And I think that it's important, and I was talking this with Yvette earlier, to now that we have access to new collectors and new generations of people, like everyone that is here, it's related to new generations of people that are buying art, manipulating art in different ways, insurance, conservation, new galleries, new curators. So how do we translate and give this information all together with the curatorial information, but also the legacy and the wealth management and I think it's a package, and I feel that new generations of professionals are a little more aware that we need to provide this service to our clients. We are not just selling them something or selling them into an idea, but into a whole structure of cultural values. So with that said, I think it would be nice to talk about how do we relate to nonprofits and other organizations that end up being the caretakers of these objects, and that through their programming, not just galleries, but I want to focus on nonprofits, through their programming, they fulfill a need that the commercial side of art can't fulfill, you know, because we have skin in the game in a different way. So I would love to, I know that there's a lot of things going on at Ulite. I think it would be important for the community to learn about it.
Okay, so I'm the vice chair of Ulite Arts. I'm not sure if the people online know Ulite, but Ulite is an organization based in South Beach, and it has been around for a very long time. And we were very lucky. It was started by an artist, Ellie, whose surname I can never pronounce. And she had a vision of creating this community in South Beach. And she donated the buildings to the South Art Center, which became Ulite. Ulite was very fortunate to have gotten those buildings because we sold one of the buildings and have invested the proceeds of the sale. And we currently have a very big endowment. So we have used that, and we apparently have the largest endowment of any cultural organization in South Florida. The only other one that is more or less at the same level is the New World Symphony. So we are building a building in Little River, and it's been designed by architects from Barcelona. And we have a whole series of programs. We just celebrated the Ellis, which is an award we give each year, approximately $500,000 to artists to do projects. We also do classes. We also have an education program with schools. And finally, we have our residency program where the residents spend 2 years at ULI. They don't have to pay for the studio. And we have an acquisitions program, which is what Nuria wanted me to talk about. So the acquisitions program, I'm the chair of the acquisition committees, and the acquisition program was started during COVID when we were thinking as a board, how can we help artists right now and galleries, because all the galleries were closed, all the artists couldn't do anything. So we came up with the idea collectively of creating a collection, but we are not a collecting entity. So we decided, okay, what are we going to do? And also we could not be buying. We didn't have, even though we have an endowment, we don't have unlimited budget for our programs. We have to live from our endowment. So the first year we decided we were going to acquire works for approximately 8 to 10 artists who are connected to ULITE. So they're generally ULITE alumni. And we would basically keep the work until we open our building. And when we open our building, we'll do a show with the work that we have bought. The idea is, and this is what makes the program unique, I sort of copied it from an organization I belong to in London. But basically the idea is that all the work that we acquired, we have done 3 years of acquisitions. The first year we acquired Karen Rifa's work. All the work we acquired, after it's shown in our space, we will donate it to a museum. So it's a way of getting some of our Florida artists into collections. And the idea is we have no boundaries. We are hoping to be able to donate work internationally, nationally, and obviously locally. And now, because of this program, we started getting donations. And we can talk about that later because that's another ball game. I mean, it's sort of when you're on the other side and you see what people want to donate, you're like, oh my God, how do I deal with this? But we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah, I also, now that we're here with Karen, I wanted to, for those of you that don't know, Ula are familiar, they have during the Ellis the Michael Richards Award, which was given to Karen. So the second one was given to Karen. So I think it's a beautiful, full circle, the fact that we're here and talking about this.
As a show, the winner gets to have a show at the Bass Museum. So Karen had a lovely show at the Bass. Actually, I had 2 years ago. Okay, so there you go.
Yeah, and then I can just talk about one organization that I'm involved with. So before I went back to my current law firm, I worked in a family office and doing in-house kind of, tax planning and kind of overlapping a little bit with what Pia is doing or complementary. And one initiative of the family office is that they have a foundation and they decided they wanted to exhibit kind of international contemporary art. So the principal of the family owns this amazing building in New York in Soho. And, it's kind of the perfect Soho building, this cast iron corner building. Yeah, it's exactly, what you would think of, when you think of Soho. And it just, the space is called Canal Projects. So I'm on the advisory board of that. And previously I was involved on kind of the more legal side, but the intent of the space is to exhibit international contemporary artists. So the family is Korean American. So there is some, kind of more emphasis on Asian artists, but it's really international. And, the idea there is to be able to expose all of these artists, in the kind of New York space, at least, to, all the people coming through and to help them get museum exhibitions and get them press and one of the underlying ideas of the space is that, an exhibition at Canal Projects, represents kind of a big exhibition at a nonprofit in New York, with a substantial budget behind it that the artist, would not have been able to show in New York otherwise. So they may not be, known to a New York or a US audience, but, maybe they're really big in Brazil. And, this is their first chance to get, the exposure on an international scale. And the advisory board also consists of a curator from the Met and a curator from the Tate Modern, who is also curating the next Gwangju Biennial in April. So, it's really great to be able to think, to be involved, I guess, on the legacy side that way. And, there is that interplay too between, how do you use the legal aspects to really bring out, what you want, what you're trying to do with a nonprofit and working around those, all the rules that can be involved and, making the vision happen. So, in this case, it's, it's a little simpler, although one aspect, with nonprofits, I don't know how many of you have ever dealt with, trying to be on the compliance side of private foundations, but private foundations are a subset of 501c3 organizations, and they usually have support from one or two or just a handful of people versus a public charity, which has support from the general public. So in this case, private foundations have a lot of rules that apply to them. One thing that's interesting, is, there's always the self-dealing component to think of. That's probably the biggest aspect. So if, you're ever working with somebody with a private museum or thinking about that, there's a lot of issues to work out there. And as a lawyer, it's, kind of funny to see sometimes when people are thinking about that, can I have this artwork in my house still? No way. Can my kids sleep here if they want to, only if they're on the board and they're there for a board meeting. But, there's, the idea when you have a nonprofit, you're giving something away, and that's part of, the tax benefits that arise from that as well. So, it's, fun to work with people to craft, what their ultimate vision will become, in this nonprofit, and from the nonprofit side, what the nonprofit is doing in the community and how it relates back to its founders, if it is it's a closer organization like a family foundation.
Yeah.
ULA puts a lot of effort making sure we are not a foundation, even though we have, as obviously we transition from being a poor organization in South Beach to being a very wealthy organization. So institutionally, there are a lot of changes that need to happen to be ready to run a building that it's $30 million or whatever it is, and to have more programs, how to integrate the community, because we're building this amazing building in a community that needs, to be integrated. But we also have the whole self-dealing and all that. Even though we are not a foundation, we just make an effort to follow the rules of a foundation as much as we can.
I think this is important it's important that you discuss this and you share this, because it shows that there's more involvement than just the professional side or the collecting side. Like there's an involvement in how programming can impact the community and how decisions are being made and how money can be distributed. And I think that's an important part of boards. Like you yourself and are in the Miami Music Project and are involved in a different area, but in a similar capacity. Would you like to talk about it? Yeah.
Well, I think I will go back to what I was saying and then I can talk about it, because I think it's interesting to know. I was talking about shared purpose and how legacy really it's completed when you have a shared purpose. So I just want to read the definition of purpose, because I think that people, it's a very gassy word, so in psychology we say that it's the intention to accomplish something that it's personally meaningful and leads to an engagement with some aspect of the world beyond the self. So it's a lot of a philosophical conversation within the family that you have to have with that, and the best way to do it is through philanthropy, to do the purpose, because through philanthropy, the families unite the family purpose, the shared purpose, with an external common purpose, that it's the purpose of the society. So when we talk about wealth, actually, wealth, it's not only financial, it's also human wealth, social wealth, and intellectual wealth. So social wealth, it's how your family is reflected in society. So do you want your family to be reflected as the gang of guys that go out in Ferraris and have accidents, DUIs every weekend? Or you want your family to be the owner of this foundation or museum, or the donor of these pieces that are making so many people happy every Sunday when they can go and see them, or you want to donate instruments to little kids that we use at the Miami Music Project. We use music as a transformation element. We create social transformations through music, and I can see the kids coming from very, very poor families, graduating from high school and graduating from college. So it's a complete social transformation. Basically, you take a family out of the very low income to be a professional. So going back to my clients, it's very difficult for clients to do this. I mean, the mortality thing, it's one thing, but then they think that the family, we have to keep it on the family and all that. And I have one example of things that are not being done the right way, but the person wants to do it this way. And he has a very nice collection of Impressionist art, and the collection, it's in Paris, in New York, in Miami, and in his home country. And it's worth about $150 million. So we decided to put the collection under a trust. And the only inheritors of that collection, the beneficiaries of that trust of the collection, are his kids. But he has chosen which work of art will go to which kid, That was chosen according to his knowledge of what the kid wants. And of course, the value was taken into account because we put together pieces that were of similar value. So no, the kids will not be fighting because this piece is $100,000 more than this one, whatever. But at the end, the question is, do you really know your kids? Because do your kids really like Impressionist art? Or do they want to have like more contemporary art? Or do they don't want to have art at all, So I think that we go back to to start a legacy, you have to start with a conversation and a common shared purpose. And that is talking to them and knowing them, knowing which are their strengths and their lesser strengths, what they are good at, what they are loved, what their passions. So if you really have a kid that will enjoy having that hanging in their walls, great. But maybe you will be better off donating those pieces to a museum. And if you want, put the name of your name in the museum, if you want that, if that's your word, that your way of transcending. Yeah. You know, if you want to transcend that way, do it that way, or put the name of your kids. But ask your kids, have the conversation with your kids. What do they want? Personally, I don't consider myself a collector, but I think that one of my strengths is appreciation of beauty. And I do buy from time to time certain pieces that I really fall in love with. And the way I have done my will, in the case I don't have kids, I have 2 nephews and 1 niece. So, for example, I've considered the personality of each of that's mine. Don't worry, you can keep it there. The personality of each of the kids. So I have 1 kid that it's not particularly fond of art, but he's super fond of climate. You know, he's into climate change and all that. He's 15 years old. So I have 2 pieces by Olafur Eliasson from the time that he wasn't famous nor expensive, and these are photographs of Iceland, and you could see the decline of the ice on the mountains, you know. So those 2 pieces will be for him, not because of the art or how much they are worth or whatever. They are for him because they are about climate change, and he's a lover of climate change, you know. I have another one who doesn't give a damn about these things. He's more concerned about money. So I will not give him any piece of art. I will give him money, you know, because he is more concerned about that. Or maybe I will send him to a place where he will learn to look at other things, you know, who knows? He will change there a little. And so it's like, it depends on each personality. And my niece, it's a kind of, she's the daughter of 2 artists. So she's also kind of an artist. So the first gift that she gave to me was a painting that she did, and was a vase with flowers, kind of Matisse-like, you know, and she gave me the painting and she told me, put it next to your bed. So every day that you wake up, you will have flowers, because she knows that I love flower arranging and I love flowers and all that. So can you see the sensibility of that kid? I mean, you have to talk to that kid more and more and more, and go out with her. And I took her to the Andy Warhol exhibition at the Palm, and she was, I mean, with the clouds, she was like, how did he do this? I mean, how did he think about doing this? So this is a kid that is really interested in art. So I will work with her and see what she likes. Or maybe she says, let's sell all this and buy this thing and donate it to this. Let's talk about that. Let's have the conversation. I think that's the important thing. Yeah. She's 10. Yeah.
So I have a very different story, which it's sort of funny in retrospect. But when my husband is British, and I have 3 stepchildren, and one of them is an artist, and she's broke, like, you know, she lived in Berlin and then Portugal, like artists do. The other one is a homeopath, and it's very good with money, whatever. And then my stepson is a management consultant in New York. And so I was like, when I was moving from London to Miami, I'm like, oh, I don't want to move all this art, so I'm going to give the kids some of the art that I can give at this stage in my life. So I split it. So I did it randomly. I put all the names in a bag and I took them out, whatever. And the homeopath who is the least interested in art. She got the best stuff, you know. And then, and then my stepson, who has gone on to start his own collection, and at Untitled San Francisco, and now has some things that I'm like, oh wow, he really has done well. He got all the crap, not all the crap, because nothing was crappy, but he didn't get any of the things that I thought would be more valuable or whatever. So I was like, how, this is not fair, but it was too late to fix it. So don't do it randomly either.
I have an idea for that. I would have put like 3 different bowls, by the very good ones, the good ones, the okay ones, and just like that's an idea. But I mean, this is my cue to start talking about donations, which is gonna be our last topic. Like what you keep, what you give. I don't come from a particularly art savvy upbringing, but my dad did like cars a lot, which is a very difficult thing to collect because they broke, they use a ton of space. There's so many things that you need to take care of, but they're like the example translates to art, to anything. And then who gets what? And he lives in Mexico and I live here. And my dad has this car that we drove from Los Angeles to Mexico City. It was a piece of crap. And he fixed it through many years. Like it took about 10 years to get fixed. And it's beautiful. It's like a red Mustang and, very pretty. I got my quinceañera on them. I got married on it. I almost got divorced in it. So, and I see the car, I was like, man, they're thinking about selling it. And I was like, I hope I could just shrink it and keep it. And I know it's just a thing, but it kind of like breaks my heart knowing that it might just end up somewhere else and it's full of memories. And for me, it's hard, it's like, why he didn't like collected something smaller? And the conversation is who gets what and how what gets donated. And I feel that in that feeling, we let things go to a museum because we feel that they're going to be better preserved there and other people are going to enjoy it. I don't want anyone to drive my dad's car, but what am I going to do? Like, it is what it is. And a museum is different. But then not all museums got our stuff. You have the conversations with the boards. As we were saying before, art is it's a responsibility. So what you're basically giving to the museum or the nonprofit is a responsibility to now consider the expenses that those works or that work, have. And then the other conversation is curatorial. Is this piece aligned with the mission of the museum? Is this piece aligned with the conversation that the museum wants to have, especially now that, let's say, museums are inviting more proposals for female artists, which, like, being at our table and on our table talk, it's important to bring up, African-American art, Asian art, Latino art. So where do we start with the donation? How anyone starts with that?
Okay, so I can speak quickly about my personal donation and then how ULAIT is gonna, well, we still don't know how we're gonna deal with donations, but what we're thinking. So I started my collection with collecting photography. And interestingly, some of my photographs are the best pieces in my collection. Like I have a Shirin Nesha, I have a Gillian wearing, and I have all these Lee Etresh, I have all these photographers that are well known, but photography is a nightmare to conserve, particularly after the artists stopped using Cibachrome. Because Cibachrome lasts forever, but other ways of printing photography doesn't last. So it starts, even if you put it in a dark room, it just with the heat, it's not only light, it's only heat. So I decided, okay, I'm going to start donating by donating the photos that I can donate, because my Shirin Nesha was the first piece I ever bought. I was broke. I had to like get a cash advance from my credit card. And I bought it before she was known to anyone. So that piece is gonna die with me. But the other photographies, I started donating. So I approached, I also, next step was decide where, because some of my photos could go to any museum. You know, I went to, because I lived in the UK, I have a lot of British art, and I studied at Yale, and they have the British Museum, and I know the director, and I know that some of those pieces could go there, but I'm like, who's gonna see them at Yale from my community in Miami? No one is gonna see them. So I decided, what museum do I want to focus on? And I figure I want to focus on teaching museums. So museums that are connected to a university, so students can learn and also benefit from, from the work. So I started talking to FIU and the law and split I started with 5. Donating is not that easy. It's hard to donate your work. So I started with the law and FIU, and Amy Galpin, I don't know, most of you know her. She's like, this is great because these are artists. 2 of them had been in the Venice Biennale. One of them was in the Pinot collection. And these students have never had that opportunity to be exposed to artists that are from Ukraine or Argentina, whatever, who have been at the Venice Biennale or the Sao Paulo Biennale or whatever. And then the law, I gave sort of the 2 pieces that were more valuable. But then Jill from the law told me, are they in perfect condition? So I went and I looked at a piece by Elisa Sigiscelli, who is an Italian artist represented by Gagosian, amongst others. And I noticed, oh my God, there's a problem with the piece. So I couldn't donate it. So then I spoke to Gagosian, because photographers sometimes reprint the work and do it. The artist was like, I've moved from that. I'm not doing that anymore. So I cannot reprint the piece. So basically, I had to destroy the piece, which was horrific, and get the insurance money. But basically, I had to go to the museums. They were very specific. We are not going to take everything you are giving us. And then what I did was, what you do is like you connect things. So I had like 3 really good pieces and one that is a very good piece, but it's an artist no one knows. So I said, well, I would only donate the 4 together. So they ended up with the 4th, and actually Pepe Mar put the 4th one that they didn't want in his show, Tesoro. So you never know. And then with the law, she was very specific. We have storage problems, blah, 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 blah. We are not going to take everything. So of the original 2, I had to destroy 1, and then I donated the other one. But it's very complicated. You need to get, if the value of the piece is more than $5,000, you have to get a third-party valuation. And then that's when you have a heart attack, because the third-party valuation is based on the market value of the piece, which is based on auction prices. So I was getting like a quote from Gagosian, and this piece is worth blah, 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 blah. And then I look at the auction record, and the auction record for that artist was like a quarter of the piece of the price that Gagosian was given. So, just keep in mind that when you donate, your tax benefit is not going to be the gallery value. It's going to be the market value. And that can be a big difference.
Yeah.
So, so it was obviously museums have requirements. If they take your donation, I think they have to hold it for a year or something. They cannot just sell it. So I donated unrestricted. So if they want, they can sell them. But to me, the whole valuation scenario was traumatic because obviously I was donated because I wanted to get rid of some of my photos and I didn't want to sell them, but I was hoping to get a nice tax benefit, which I didn't. I mean, I got a tax benefit, but it was not as big as I expected. And then just quickly on Oolite. So we now have someone who shall remain nameless, who donated a piece by an Oolite alumni. And the piece has nothing to do with what that artist does. The piece is probably the length of this wall. Fortunately, it's a painting and it's not framed. So, and it's not very pretty. So, I mean, I don't even know if the artist will want that piece donated to a museum, but that's a different story. So we are like, oh my God, we have to take the donation because, you know, it satisfies all our requirements. It's an Oolite person, you know, it's in good condition, it has a value. Unfortunately, it doesn't need any conservation right now, and it's easy to store because it's raw. But that started our conversation. How are we going to deal in the future? Because we don't want to become the organization that takes donations of things that people want to get rid of for God knows what reasons. So we are in the process of putting together a donation guidelines and have been looking at what museums do. And a lot of it obviously has to do with, we don't give tax certificates. So, you know, don't expect us to tell us how much this piece is worth. It has to be something that doesn't create conservation issues. It has to be something that doesn't break federal law, that is not like money laundering or whatever. And it has to be something that is not toxic, that, you know, we're not going to put it in storage and then someone goes, opens the storage and dies because it's, you know, so it's, we have like, but it was a lot of things I hadn't thought about that we should consider when taking donations. So we have someone else who wants to make a donation and I'm like, wait until we have our guidelines and then we'll be in touch, but it's really interesting.
Yeah, I think that for example, I'm from Mexico and we're not very organized, but we do have something that that artists have taken advantage of, and now it's become a problem because they can't pay with work. They can pay their taxes with actual works, which means we have a museum with all these things that they don't give you the best one also. So there is like a sample sale for some things. You know, you can find very good pieces, but it becomes an issue. Now the museum is receiving every year, every time that someone finishes their taxes, you have all these artists just, you know, giving and giving. But something to take into consideration. I feel that brings the conversation back to advisory and how we purchase art. And I know, like, in the heat of the moment, my first artwork that I ever bought is made out of tape. Yeah. And tape has glue, and glue doesn't respond very, very well to aging. And then it's like, you know, coming off, but it's like, it's a flower. So now the artist is telling me that it's mutating, like it's a flower that is moving. And I'm like, of course.
About museums and pieces. My Jillian I'm wearing is from when she did the science series. It was an original. So it's more than 20 years old. So, and it turned out, it's not the most popular image in the series, but it was the one that it was on the cover of Art Forum. So you know, every time she has a show and she shows the series, they do an exhibition version. So I go and I look at it and I'm like, my photo doesn't look like that. The colors are not the same. So what do I do? So I started speaking to local director museums because everyone wants that piece. And they're like, some of them are like, oh, it needs to be reprinted. And some are like, no, it has to be the original. So it's really also interesting what museums think about pieces that are old and that obviously have aged and changed, you know?
Yeah, that's important to consider. What are your thoughts on donations, Pia and Melissa?
Well, I would say on donations, yeah, I think exactly what you're saying shows why you have to have these conversations far in advance, because all of these other potential hiccups can happen along the way. And, exactly what you were saying as well, that, museums don't want everything. And, when you're doing your estate planning or, even lifetime gifting, you can't just say, I leave my entire collection to the Perez Museum. They don't want it, and then you actually end up in bad situations that way, because now you've left something to an institution that doesn't want it. And it can create all these other issues about, well, what happens next? Well,
It usually it usually ends up with an art advisor or a gallery. It's like it comes around, but
Exactly.
the chances, like at advisory level, the chances of, if the museum doesn't want it, probably the secondary market is gonna be very, very mean to it also. So it goes into a funnel, and no one wants that. We want to feed healthy market system, that serves the purpose of the art. But I want Pia to close with donations, and we're gonna do a thing that we're trying. I'm gonna be trying this, which is a flash round. So donations, and I'm gonna ask you 2 questions that you need to just like go on it, and that's how we're gonna close. It's gonna be very much like think on your feet, but it's gonna be fun. So yeah, donations.
First, I want to go back to your story about your father, and it was a Corvette or a Mustang. Mustang. Okay, they drive well. So behind every emotion, there is a thinking, So I think that what you are thinking is a relationship with your father, and so that is what it's important when you are considering donations and giving and all those things. So once again, have the conversation with everybody. Now, donations to third parties, they are super difficult. They are super difficult, as you mentioned, as Marilena mentioned. So my advice, and if I am into that situation, I will say I will call the best advisors I can get, I can pay, art advisors and independent advisors, not calling the gallery that represents them, because definitely they will give you a higher price. But yeah, I mean, very informed, independent decisions. That's what you have to do, and confront the reality. I mean, maybe your art, it's not worth what you were thinking, it's like apartments here, that everybody thinks that their apartments now in Miami, they're worth like millions and millions. And no, there are 3 prices at the end, So, I mean,
we were talking about this.
yeah.
Sorry, one thing that I have also considered, and Mario did, Mario Calder, what's his? Mario from El Salvador. Yes, well, as you can tell, I'm a lawyer, but I'm horrible with names. So Mario, basically, what he did was he donated, I would say maybe like 7 pieces to Locust Projects for their fundraiser, for the smash and grab.
You heard this here first.
He did it like a couple of years ago. So, people could get some of the pieces, smash and grab, you get a number and you run and you grab. So he donated a few pieces. I don't know what he did tax wise. It's not, whatever, but that's another way, if you donate to a local organization that is having a fundraiser. And also, and Margiles did the same the year after. He donated a few photos to Locust Projects for the smash and grab. So that's another option.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. You know, if you have pieces that are not on that level of museum quality, then donate it for fundraising to any organization. And I did that with a couple of Cruz Diez that were like lithographs or something like that. And they at the auction, they actually fetch more money than what they were worth, because people that were buying were actually paying for the organization. So, and the other thing that I was going to mention, and not just and then if you don't have like good quality pieces, then go to one of the auction houses and sell your collection. And that's most of the millionaires are doing right now. You know, like there are a couple of very good collections being sold, and then you will have less problems with your kids, and then give the money to a museum so they can buy what they need, because museums, that the curators need exactly what it's missing in the museum collection. Exactly. So if you are, I was in the board of a museum in Peru, and I remember that I was in the acquisition committee, and I remember that people was trying to donate us these things. I said, no, I want to talk to that curator, and I want him to tell me exactly what piece from what period we are missing, and we're going to get that piece. You know, because a museum cannot have like several pieces of, well, because you have them. It's just, it has to be curated. And if not, go and sell the collection.
Yeah.
You know?
I agree.
I would just throw in two things, I guess three things. I guess first, for charitable deduction purposes, there is this rule about related use. So if there's different levels, when you're donating something other than cash, there are different percentages that you can deduct against for your income tax purposes. And there's this thing called the related use rule. So if you donate an artwork to a museum and then they sold it you know, in 6 months, that would be a problem. You'd have a lower deduction. The rule is it has to be used for its purposes for at least 3 years. And, you know, when you file your taxes, you file something called a Form 8283. And, you know, then the museum also has their information on there. And if they do dispose of it within a certain amount of time, they have to report that to the IRS. So that's just something to watch out for. And then I would also note just 2 recent tax court cases from this year. And I won't make you glaze over with tax court decisions, but basically both of them involve charitable deductions. And in both cases, you know, it was just a kind of a basic failure to comply with what the statute said. So in the first case that came out earlier this year, the collector made a gift of Native American artwork to a museum, and the way the gift agreement was set up, there was a deed of gift that the museum issued, and the deed of gift referenced an attachment that was the gift agreement. However, no gift agreement was actually attached, and it also made the IRS think, well, is this really an unconditional gift? Because, you know, that's the compliance portion, you know, because every time you make a donation over a certain amount, you get your letter.
It's very important at accounting level for nonprofits, because nonprofits have a concept that for-profits don't have, which is restricted assets. So you have restricted assets, which is you got the money is there, but you cannot use it unless certain conditions meet. And that can be time sensitive or like a regulation that is totally random. So yes, it's taken into consideration. So we're gonna close with a flash run. But just before, there was a question about the difference between fair market value and replacement value, and I feel that someone here wants to answer that question because real quick. So the real quick, just to make the audience participate in some capacity. Sharky, come. Like, what's the difference, real quick, between fair market value and replacement value?
Well, and please, ladies, step in. Fair market value, what a willing buyer and seller is willing to cut a deal. Oh, sorry. Usually my voice doesn't need a microphone. So fair market value, what a buyer, seller are willing to agree upon with, yes. Having all the information. See, it's a collective effort. And retail replacement value, ladies.
Is whatever the gallery is selling it for.
Furniture store and buy a new sofa by the same designer that day.
What it's hanging on the wall for. You heard from our members at our table.
And that's
So-
why it was better for me to destroy it, because I was gonna get to sell the Gagosian value. And even with the tax or whatever, it was much than the benefit from the tax deduction. But what is also interesting is that if the artist doesn't have an auction record, which is better for you, if they don't have an auction record, because if they have 2 auction records from 5 years ago, that's an auction record. But if they don't have an auction record, then the valuation is based on the gallery's value. So, yeah, so basically,
Which it can be anywhere.
my 4th piece, that was the one that I thought was worthless, ended up being valued at the gallery value, which was not low. So I ended up doing better with that piece than the other ones.
There you go. That was the difference. So and it needs to be real information. So yeah, it cannot just be posted online and now that's a value, of course.
This artist sells, is from Spain, and he has a very active, people buy his work in Spain, and he's been in the Reina Sofia, whatever. So his value was not a fake value, it was a proper value, but no one knows who he is in the US.
So flash round for closing, real quick. Last artwork you purchased.
The Jamila Sabur piece from Nina Johnson.
Yeah, and where you bought it. That's very important. So last artwork you purchased.
I'm in the process of buying a Colleen Smith piece, actually for a charity auction.
Awesome. Which auction?
It was for Mass Mocha.
Okay,
I believe.
perfect. Maria Pia, last artwork you purchased.
I haven't.
You haven't purchased anything lately?
No.
Last one? No, nothing?
Last one, it was an artist, Chicago artist from the 50s.
Okay.
And it's a piece that caught my eye and
You bought
went
it.
Well, yeah.
And last thing for the day. What do you recommend during our Basel Miami Beach fair, show, anything that you want to recommend to the audience? Because we're gonna have our brunch, our table brunch through our Miami at Design Miami. I almost forgot. Like we're having it somewhere. Friday, December 2nd. There you go.
Well,
Sorry, there's so many things.
I will definitely recommend Untitled Art Fair and Clandestina Art Fair.
Clandestina Art Fair this year.
And also the William Kentridge Opera at the Arch Center. That's going to be magnificent.
Very good. Well, I think it's already open, but I'm excited to see the Didier William exhibition that I think is very nearby here. I have a good friend who I have a couple of they're very good collectors. They just bought a piece. I saw a lot of his work at Frieze London recently, and he's great. So I'm excited to go see that.
Maria, yeah, anything happening at the Miami Music Project or anything that you want to recommend?
On December 10th, we are going to have our winter concert. That is like our gala. We have a concert, not a gala.
When is that?
December 10th.
Okay.
So it's not during our Basel, but I think that just avoid art. I mean, not avoid our Basel per se, but it's just.
Which is also a very good recommendation. Someone had to say it.
I mean, I've been living here. I remember when I went to the first Art Basel and it was really nice, and then it became like a circus. So it is like.
You can come to
Yeah,
other circus.
can come to
Oh,
other
but yeah.
circus, but I like it very much. But I think that the smaller furs, are the ones that we should go.
We went together to Barcelona.
Yeah, we
and
went
we
to
had a blast.
Barcelona,
Yeah.
we had a blast, and there were a lot of new artists too. Actually, that was
Emerson Dorsch show at Barcelona.
Yeah.
Also, whoop,
Yeah.
whoop, Miami.
So maybe one of those pieces will be the last one. I haven't bought it yet, but
Okay.
I will buy for one from
Put it in
that fair. Yeah. So visit the smaller fairs and try to connect with the artists, I guess, if you can.
Well, yeah.
Sorry. The last piece of the puzzle is please make sure you have a good insurance for your art.
There you go. There you
Don't
go.
save money, because the money you save now, if you have a problem, this
You're
is
gonna
not
spend
an
it later.
advertisement, but I use Shop Masterpiece, and every time I've had a problem, they have been magnificent.
Well, yes. That's correct. If you are insured, if you're not insured, shame on you. If you're insured, you need to do appraisals every 2 years for your 2 to 2 years for your collection. I have a different you should do it every year just to be safe. Honestly, I know. there's plenty of appraisals here. You should do it every year or every time that you can. I want to thank all the audience. I want to thank our speakers. I know that everyone is very busy, and I appreciate the fact that everyone make time to do this with us. This is the first hour series on estate management. Hopefully, we're going to talk about other juicy topics like divorce, death, and all those amazing things that we need to take into consideration. Thanks to Emerson Dorsch, thanks to Karen Rifas, and a round of applause for
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We're gonna do one specialized on art estates and how artist estates and how to prepare to get organized, cataloging, case of studies. So this is a series, and also with Emerson Dorsch, we're preparing something. This is for our table. Our table is going to host this at a national level with chapters proposing different things. Sharky already has an idea that she's going to hold in Palm Beach. But yeah, for sure, there's a topic that we're going to discuss in a more private level, maybe at a workshop level even, for artists to know where they stand, to ask the questions that you guys want to make, because I know there's for some reason all the artists are sitting there. But yes, we're gonna do that. Okay. Yes. No, we're gonna talk about this. It's it's something that we're gonna talk about this because it's something that is being there's some case of studies here in Miami that are currently going on, and we would like to invite families that are going through the process of organizing estates. It might or might not happen, but yeah, it's related to what we've been discussing in a different way, but a very important thing to discuss. Thank you so much.